Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we'll Masechtas Gittin Daf Pei Zayin. We're going to begin on Pei Vav Amud Beis by the new Mishnah. Let's see the Masechtas. Shnayim Shishalchu Shnei Gittin Shab. So you have two different people, and they sent two Gittin in which they were the same. Says Rashi, Bishmai Sehen. The names were the same, and this Arvu, and then all of a sudden they got mixed up. Nice and shnei lazu, because we don't know which get to give to each woman, so therefore we give both to both women. Lefikach, therefore, avad echamehen. Let's say before it was given, it got lost. Hari hasheni batel. Then the second one is batel. Says Rashi, duli adin and damanehu. We don't know who to give it to. The only way that these two women will be divorced is if they both receive both gittin. So if one of them is lost, because of this doubt of the one that we have left, whose it belongs to, so you can't give that one. And then the Mishnah says the following: Chamisha shekasvu klal b'toch get. Let's say you have 5 people that wrote a general statement within one get, one document. Each ploni megarish plonis, uploni plonis. So you have, instead of having 5 different gittin, you have, for 5 different divorces, use one document to divorce all 5 women. And these are 5 different men with 5 different women. But Edim Milmata, we have witnesses on the bottom, Kuling Sharon. Amazingly, this actually works. And obviously, you have to give this get to each of the women. Obviously, she'll take it and take it back, etc. Typhus, but let's say you wrote a typhus for each one. The Gemara can explain that it was more specific to the individual. The Eidim Milmata, even though you have witnesses on the bottom, Es She'edim Nikrin Imo Kosher. The witnesses that are together with those names, then it's kosher. What does that mean? It says Rashi, Hainu Tachtoin. It means the last names, the ones which are closest to the signatures. Avol El Yoinim, all of the names be above that, Psulin. Shemulu Heidu El Ha'acharon. Maybe those witnesses are only testifying on these last people, because there was an individual typhus written for each. Says the Gemara, Man Tana. So who is the Tana of our Mishnah that Rashi says, Tani the ikatakanta b'naisin shnehem lazu shnehem lazu? That in the case where this get is all mixed up, that we're lenient and we say you can actually give it to both women. So Rabbi Yirmiyah Dula Rabbi Lazar, Di Rabbi Lazar Kivan Di Rabbi Edim Asirakarti. Since he holds it's necessary that you need witnesses when it's given over. Holo yade behind minaihu kamigarsha. He doesn't know which one is being divorced. Says Rashi, therefore must be like Rav Meir. Hilkach kol achs mehen miskareshes b'shalah. Each one is being divorced. Shahari baliyah, that's coming to our hands. The edim chasumin bo. And you have witnesses. Rav Meir kivan deloy boy edim asira. Since you don't need edim for the giving it over, shapradami. Hakol Gittin nami mishachasmu ha'edim. When they sign it, any yodlami yanasin, they don't know who they're giving it, who it's being given to. Halo yade edim asira behind minayim garsha. Says Rashi, inzu nesina lishma. This is not considered to be a nesina which must be done lishma. There's going to be a question actually right here. Mivoreres. Rebbe Lezer kivan dechasim l'shma l'boy. Rebbe Lezer doesn't require the signatures to be l'shma. Al korchach l'shma nechsib b'kra aksav b'nasan koi. He requires the writing of the get must be l'shma, and also the giving of the get must be l'shma. So let's turn right out of the gate to TA 25, and the question is, Ha'im nesin be'ina nesinas get l'shma. It's really machlokas. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Lezer, according to Rabbi Lezer, be'ina nesina l'shma, or Rabbi Meir lo be'ina. And we're going to see in a moment, according to Abaya, So, at least according to this opinion, according to Rabbi Elazar, he says, so that's one possibility. Abaya Omer, Afil Tem Rabbi Elazar. He says that this would work. But don't you require Nasim L'Shma? Ema deboy Rabbi Elazar, Ksiv L'Shma. Nasim L'Shma, me boy. So it's actually impossible that Rabbi Elazar only requires the writing of the get to be L'Shma, but maybe not the Nesina. So that's TA 25. So it's possible it's a machlokas, or even Rabbi Elazar agrees that the only thing that's required that must be L'Shma is actually the writing of the get. He doesn't hold the signing of the get because he holds Eid Masir Karti, but doesn't mean that Nesina must be L'Shma. Let's continue. So the Gemara says as follows. Chamisha shekasav klal. So again, you have this generally written get with 5 divorces happening simultaneously, and it works. Now, heichadami klal, heichadami typhus. What exactly is this referring to? That when it works, when it doesn't work, except for the last one. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan zman echad l'kulon. If there's one time that's mentioned, one date, zeu klal, because it's including all of them. Zman l'chol echad ve'echad zeu typhus. So because Rabbi Yochanan, if you write down a different zman for each of them, so that means that's more specific. Reish Lakish, as we continue to pay Zayin B'd Aleph, even if you wrote the Zman separately for each of them, nonetheless it could still passel the top ones. The kosiv, that for it to be more generalized, what you need to do is not just have separate time. The kosiv, you wrote anu ploni uploni girashnu nishesenu ploinus uploinus. So basically what you're doing is you're putting all the men's names together. Frank, George, Bill, Mike, and Ronnie are divorcing the following 5 women. So that is certainly they're all being together. So when the witnesses sign it, it's clear that their signatures and testimony is not just on one of them, but it's on all of them. Rabbi Abel, Rabbi Yochanan, Zman Echad L'Kulam Zehu Klal. Now he said, a klal is in a situation where you have one time for all of them. Why don't we say that when the witnesses sign it, they're only on the last one are they signing? How do you know for sure that we should say that the chasima of the Eidim is going on all of them? Maybe it's only on the last one. So Milo Tanya, do we not learn? Eidim chasumim al shila shalim. When you have witnesses that sign regarding shila shalim, beget. Apostle, says Rashi, they write shila shalom chasmul, like just a greeting, below get, but not on the document. Apostle, dahavi milsabapi nafshe. It's like a separate thing, umafsekes, and therefore it separates their signatures. It doesn't necessarily prove that they're signing on the get. Chayshin and Shema al Shil Shalom Chasmu. It just seems like maybe they're writing a Hallmark card, right? They're signing something else. The fact that it's possible that they're signed something else, so therefore it's going to show that perhaps anything above it is not valid. They weren't testifying on it. So why don't we say the same thing? Maybe they're only testifying on the last people, not the first. So and this is actually going to be question 7a. Let me just read it before I get to the answer. Rav Yochanan Zman Echad L'Kulon Zehu Klal. Ma'ishna b'design Eidim HaChasum El Shil Shalom. But get that's puzzle. So why is Shil Shalom puzzle? And over here, we're just assuming that they're testifying on everyone. So he says, again, Lav Idmo Rababo, Ladimah partially Minei Rabbi Yochanan was explained, Sha'olu Pasul, this Sha'olu Kosher. So it's totally on the Vav Mechuber. That if you wrote Sha'alu, So it shows that you're not linking yourself to what was previous. And therefore it's puzzle, because that's a hefsek. But if vish'alu, if you have a vav, then it's going to be kosher. So hachinami dechsibe ploni uploini. So it's not just that they wrote one name, Bill, George, Mike, but they wrote Bill and George and Mike. And therefore, because of that, that's the reason why they're all linked together. V'sul Rav Yochanan, according to Rav Yochanan, Yermizman L'chol Echad Zeu Taifus, he says that if you have a time for each one separately, that's considered to be like it's separate. It's like that's considered to be the Taifus. So according to him, my area mishum Taifus. Why do you want to tell me it's considered like a Taifus? The typically the havile nichtam b'yoyim v'nechtam b'layla. Why don't you say that there is a different point? Because the fact that you have different dates, it's like it was written on one day and signed on a different day, which we discussed before, as Rashi says here, the havikuhu bar mebatra nichtavu hayoyim v'nechtamu l'achar zman shahayu l'chosmu edim ad shekasavu hachara nechtam b'layla. They signed on a later date than the day that was written on the get. And we said before, way before in Daf Yud Zayin, as Rashi says, nichta b'yoyim v'nechtam b'layla pasul. The koshkin lo machar b'yoyim orcha. If they all have different dates on it, so that get should be pasul altogether. So how is this something which is acceptable? L'chayra, this should not be allowed, because they're signing on a date which is before the day that they're signing it. They signed it on a different day. That it was written b'chad b'shaba. In other words, it was all on the same day. Says Rashi, Girash ploinis, that I'm divorcing, this man's divorcing this woman. B'hadar kasa b'chad b'shaba, on Sunday, Gufi Girish Ploinis Tahashna Misli Kama El Mishum Hafsaka. The whole point is it's a Hafsaka. They're separating one from the other. And that's the reason why only the last one works. However, don't say the reason is because there are different dates. It's possible just because they wrote Zman, it could be the same Zman. It was all on the same day. Armali Ravina Ravashi L'Reish Lakish Yermer Zman Echad Kuanami Taifas Havi, that even if you wrote one time for everyone, it's still considered to be a taifas. V'hechidami klal. And he said, what's the rule? That it's considered general. D'chsibei hachi anu ploni uploni girashtanu nishaisenu plonis uplonis. Only again where he says all these men are divorcing all these women. Nimsu shtei nashim miskarashos b'gedechad. In Chayram, this sounds like you're divorcing many women with the same get, because they're all written together. So that you have to divorce her, not her and her friend. But the way that it's written, it sounds like this is a direct violation of law, because they're all coupled together. My answer is, you're right. But the hut, which is question 7b, I believe, because of law. So this is the answer. The Hadar Kasav, you have to write again, Ploni Girash Plonis. Uploini Girash Plonis. So even though you did write them all together, that makes it a klal, like one, but so that it's one, so that the witnesses are signing for all of them, but then you have to write it separately again. So that this way, it's not like one get that you're just using over and over for multiple people, but rather, since you specified each individual, this man's divorcing this woman, fine. A person writes all of his possessions to two servants. So in that situation, kanu, they are kinda items, umeshachron zed zeh, and they can free one another. And Rashi says, the Eved Gomer Lo Lo Meisha. We learn out a Gezer Shava from Isha that it should be the same din. Why don't we passel of Velo Lo V'Chaverta? You're freeing both of them really at the same time. So why does that work? V'lav Okimna B'Shnei Shtaros. We're talking over there with two documents. Says Rashi, Shekasa b'shtar kol nechasei leploni avdi. You wrote a star, all the possessions are going to go to Ploni, my servant. Shtar sheni, in the second document, you wrote kol nechasei nesunim leploni avdi. All my possessions will be given over to, again, my servant. U'masel lehen b'vas achas. They were given at the same time. Shul kodem zel zeh. Neither of the avadim got it first. Hilkach kanu shneim. They both were kind at the same time. Each of them are basically saying, oh, it's all mine, it's all mine. So that is what we're referring to. We're not talking about one star, it was two stars. Tani kavas to Rabbi Yochanan, Tani kavas to Reish Lakish. So Tani kavas to Rabbi Yochanan, Chamishin shekasu b'tzayich get. You have 5 people that wrote within one get, each ploni megarish plonis. He said, this man is divorcing this woman. Uploini ploinis, uploini ploinis. They're all separate, and it says, however, Uzman Echad Kulam. It says that each of them wrote a separate date, Ve'edim Mulmata, and there's witnesses on the bottom, Kulam Kasherim. They're all considered to be kosher, V'tinasan L'chol Achas V'achas. So even though it says Uzman, because Uzman Echad Kulam, I'm sure I said it correctly, there was one Zman. So the fact that it was one Zman, that still keeps it as a klal. Therefore, they can all be divorced with it. Zman l'chol echad v'echad. However, if let's say there were separate times, even though, as we established, not different dates, not Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're all on Sunday, but you wrote Sunday by each one individually, that's enough to make it like a typhus. V'edem umata eshe edim nikroi mimoy kosher. Only the bottom, the last name, that woman and that man and woman are divorced, no one else above it. If there is revach, if there's space between them, it's possible, because then it's not clear who they're testifying for. But there's no space, kosher. Shein zman mafsikan, because time is not going to be the hefsek. So therefore, all of them will be kosher if they're all written close together, which would mean that the Edom are testifying on everything. They're testifying on all of them. You have 5 people that wrote, again, this one general document, and this is how he specifies it. Anu ploni uploni. All the men's names are together. Gerashnu nishaysenu ploinis uploinis. We're divorcing these women. And then afterwards it splits it up and says Ploni, Girish Plonis, Ploni, Girish Plonis, Uzman Echad Kulan. Even though each one has its own Zman, that's not considered a typhus. That's still considered to be a klal. And therefore, Ve'edim Milmata Kulan Ksher, Tenas L'chol Achas Zman L'chol Echad Ve'echad, if there's a time for each of them, Ve'revach L'chol Echad Ve'echad, there's space between them, Ve'edim Milmata, and they signed on the bottom. Now we're not so sure what they're signing. As she'edim nikriyimo kosher. Therefore, we say only the bottom, the last name, they're divorced and no one above it. Even if there's no space, it's still possible shazman mafsika, because the zman of the get will be separating each of the people. So Reish Lakish, my year is zman l'chol echad ve'echad. Why does he mention this whole notion about there was a time for each one? He says that it's considered to be a typhus. That's where their names were not mixed up together originally. Over here, their names were all mixed up. It just said all the guys' names and all the women's names. Then we will make a distinction when it comes to Zman. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Says the Masnis. You have Shnei Gittin. Now, the key part to this, that when it comes to the signature of Ivrim, they will sign, as were custom, Boaz ben Leib Wolf, my name and then my father's name. However, in the Avanim, they did the opposite. In Greek, they wrote the son's name, the father's name, and then the son's name. So therefore, the Iker is your name. So it gets a little bit confusing if you have someone who wrote based on the traditions of the Greeks, of the Avanim, and someone who wrote the traditions of the Ivrim, and because, again, it will depend on the first name. Is it my name or is it my father's name? The second name, is it my name or is it my father's name? With that introduction, we can now understand the rest of this Mishnah. Shnei Gittin. So you have two Gittin. Shikasu zeh b'tzad zeh. And they're written side by side. And Rashi says, B'roichev hamigillah. So it's like one long scroll, let's say a Torah scroll, blank, and you wrote on one part of it one get, and then on the next section on the left side, you wrote another get for someone else. Ushnaim edim ivrim boyim mitachas zeh l'tachas zeh. And you have two edim ivrim, which again, they sign with their name first, and then their father's name. So they wrote Boim Mizeh Zeh L'Tachas Zeh, one above the other. Okay, Ushnayim Edim Yavanim, because you have to have two witnesses for each one, and then you have Shnayim Edim Yavanim Boim L'Tachas Zeh L'Tachas Zeh. Then you have two Edim Yavanim, which again Yavanim, the first name is the father's, then the son. So Esha Edim Harishainim Nikroim Imo Kosher. So the first signatures we say is going to be kosher. So let's go straight into Rashi. Esha Edim Harishainim Nikroim Imo Kosher. Im Hevrim Chasumim Lomala Hayamini. If let's say the Ivrim signed above on the right, kosher. V'im hayavanim chasum l'mala hasamoili, kosher. And if they signed on the left one, it's kosher. We're gonna explain why it's possible. So basically, if the right side get was signed by the Ivrim, which they first write their name and then their father's name, and then the left one was the Avanim, then it's kosher. Okay, let's continue. Eid echad ivri. Okay, Eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani ve'eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani. So here, instead of having two of the signatures are Ivrim and then two are Yavanim, which you could maybe establish, it's clear who is who. One, again, you know these are Ivrim, so therefore they signed it, their names and their father's name. But when it gets all mixed up, this is where it gets confusing. Which these signatures, is this his name or is this father's name? Because now they're all mixed. So it says like this. Ve'ed echad ivri ve'ed echad yavani boy metachas zeh l'tachas zeh shneim psulim. In this situation, it becomes problematic. It becomes puzzle. So what happened over here, actually, based on the case above, there's actually this box. It says kizeh. So what was going on over here was not just that the Ivrim wrote on the right one and the Avanim wrote on the left one, but you can see it says Ruvain ben, which is, if you look at the second line inside this Rashi box, it says Ruvain ben Yaakov Ivri. Now, the right side, because they basically wrote their name extending into the second get, basically. So he wrote Ruvain, which was him, the son of Yaakov, which is his father. And then it says the Yosef Yavani. So he skipped the right side and he wrote on the left side. Right? So he wrote his father's name, and then on the right side, Ben Shimon. And then you have the third guy, which is Kahas Ivri, okay, and then Ben Levi. And then he skipped the line, and he wrote Yechzael Ben, and then Naphtali Yavani. So this is where it's all mixed up. Look at this Rashi. Okay, so fine. So this is where it can become problematic. Okay. This case is going on the next Rashi. Let's see this second Rashi. The first case was simple. They just wrote their names on the right side and the left side. Fine. Okay, let's see the second Rashi. Eid echad ivri v'echad yavani v'echad ivri v'echad yavani b'yim b'tachazeh l'tachazeh. So this is going to explain this little box which we just did. Eid ivri v'eid yavani b'yim b'tachaz get hayamini. You have the get. You have a Yavani signature and an Ivri signature, both on the right side. First of all, you have Ruvain, Ben so and so, and you also have Ben Shimon, because Shimon is also the son's name, is the man that's signing it. Latachas get, fine. Eid Ivri v'Eid Yavani boy Latachas get hayamin, Latachas get hasmol. The Eid Ivri v'Eid Yavani oy tachtehen. They're also underneath them. Boy Latachas hasmol Latachas get hayamin kigon. Shahayavani rishon, the Yavani first. Chasam tachas hasmoli. He wrote on the left side, which you can see it says Yosef. Right? He left that part blank on the right side, and he wrote Yosef. Besof Shita, at the end of the line, which you can see over here, it says dot 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 dot, because he skipped that and he went only to the left side. Chaz v'chasam ben Shimon, Shita Shnia, Tachas Yamini. He wrote Ben Shimon, which actually is his name, because Yosef is his father's name. So he wrote his name on the right side. Nimsa Shemo Tachas Yamini. So therefore his name, the son's name, is underneath the right one. The Hachi Mefarsha Chasima Didhu Benoi Shel Yosef. He's like, I'm the son of Yosef, by name of Shimon. Nimsa Shemitachas Get Hayamin, underneath the right get, Baal Latachas Get Hasmol, Shem Aviv. On the left side was his father's name. Al Smol, Shmoi Shel Hayamin, and on the right side was his name. Ve'ibri Hasheni Chasim Shmo Tachas Get Hasmoli. Then you see Kahas over here. He wrote on the left side. Now his name is Kahas. B'soiv Shita at the end of the line. V'shem Aviv Tachas Hayamini B'rosh Shita Tachteha Shul Kedarkai. And then he wrote Ben Levi, which is a little bit strange because he wrote his name Kahas on the left, and then he continued on to the next line on the right side, and he wrote his father's name Ben Levi. Nemsa Bo Matachas Get Sheni Latachas Get Rishon. Me'avani Hasheni Chasam Tachtav Kedarko B'Shita Achas. He wrote it on one line normally, right? Yachtzael, which is his son, which is his father rather. Yachtzael Ben Tachas Harishon V'Naftali Tachas Hasheni. And Naphtali's underneath the other one. Nimsa Shemo Chasam Al Hasheni. So his actual name is Naphtali, right, on the left side. So you end up having on the left side Kahas and Naphtali, who signed on the left, and you have Ruvain and Shimon, who signed on the right side. Okay, Ruvain is an Ivri, Shimon is Yavani, Kahas is Ivri, Naphtali is Yavani. Okay. Now the one thing is I don't think they actually wrote Ivri or Yavani, which is what it's written down over here. It's just to make it a little bit more understandable. But that box is clearly the second Rashi, and this is problematic. The Gemara says, "V'las kasher hai beruvein." Why don't we say that we should kasher the one of Reuven, v'hai ben Yaakov, aid, and the one that's ben Yaakov, which is Reuven ben Yaakov, that should be good, says Rashi. Therefore, v'yuchshu shneihem al yedei shnei edim rishayim. So basically, you have Reuven ben Yaakov, who's testifying, one on the right side, one on the left. Da'atanan ben ish ploni aid kosher. If all you do is write ben ish ploni aid, that's kosher. So l'chayra, he's actually writing on the left side too. He's testifying on the left get also. Now, the cause of Reuven ben Akama, that he wrote the word Reuven ben first. He didn't write ben Yaakov, and that's what it says over. That's why it was done dafka this way. You can see again in this box, Reuven ben is on the right side. If you just write Yaakov, which is your father's name, that doesn't work. Yaakov Eid Basra, and you wrote Yaakov Eid on the other side, and that will not work because that's your father's name, and therefore it will not work for that. Okay, V'chasher Haiber Reuven Bain. So the right one should work because he wrote Reuven Bain. V'skasher Haiber Yaakov Aid, and the fact that he wrote Yaakov Aid, that should also work for the left one. The Tanan Ish Ploni Aid Kosher. The cause of aid, because he didn't write the word aid. If he wrote the word aid, then maybe you're right, but he didn't, which is what it's. You don't see the word aid in this box. The boy saying, I can give you another answer. Oilam the cause of aid. Maybe he did write aid, so why isn't it good? Udiadinan b'hachasima delav Yaakovu. We all know it wasn't Yaakov that signed it. It was Reuven ben Yaakov. And therefore, because of that, it's not going to work. Okay. Because we know it wasn't his father that signed it. As we continue to pay Zayin but Beis. The Dilma b'shma diavur chasim. Maybe he's just signing his father's name on the second one, and that should work. Lo shavik in his shmei, the person doesn't leave his name, v'chasim shma diavur, and write his father's name. V'dilma simana shavia, maybe it's like a simon. You don't even have to write your name. You don't have to use the actual name. The whole Rav Tzayer Kabri made a picture of a fish. Chanina Charusa, like a tree. Rav Chisda, he made a samach. Rav Hoshia made an ayin. Rabbi Rav Huna Tzayer Mechusa, he made a mast of a ship. So you don't. All you do is just make a simon. You don't even have to actually write your name. So lo chatzav inish l'shavu shmo diavu simana. Person's not going to have the chutzpah to use his father's name as his simon. V'lis kasher hai b'shnei edim ivrim. Why don't we say that the shnei edim ivrim should be kosher? V'lis kasher hai b'shnei edim yavanim. And we should also accept those people. The non get shekasu ivrit. If you have a get that was written in Hebrew, the aid of Yavanis, and the signatories were Yavanis, or Yavanis, the aid of Ivris kosher. Maybe it's because it was separated in two lines. That's what it will not work. It's not true. That if you filled in the space, it's kosher, says Rashi. Also avir b'kroivim kosher. This airspace, it's kosher. Delo kapdinon el avira. We only care about airspace. Yaltatama, don't be concerned. Shahari avir paisel b'shleisha b'sukkah schach pasel pasel barba. So it's interesting that we always have problem with air, with dead air. So that is something which we even see by a sukkah. That if you have 3 tfachim of airspace that's above your first, as without schach, that will pass the sukkah. However, if you have schach pasel, if you fill it in with schach pasel, it's fine. So too, even if you fill it in with other stuff, it should still be good. So hatani ziri shneim ksherin. So he says you're actually right. It does. We do have the gear so that they're both kosher. Latani didan dilma gundalis chasim v'kuhul achadhu dechasime. So, what exactly is the issue over here? So, Tani Didan, the apostle, Acharain, why is it apostle? Dilma Gundalis Chasim Hayavanim. Koimer Shlo Kimin Hagam El kederch ivrim chasmu. Maybe they didn't sign it the normal way, or maybe they actually signed it like an ivri. So even though they normally sign like a Yavani, that they write their father's name, then their name, maybe they did the opposite. And therefore that's the concern. Because they're together with Ivrian, we don't know if they actually followed their custom, or their own custom, or the Ivri custom. And therefore, because of that, it becomes quite confusing. V'kul achad hu dechasimi, says Rashi, quoting the Tshuvas HaGoinim, Adam hamishtamesh biyad hasmoilus, someone who uses his left hand, who's left-handed, karin bo bimkamenu gundalia. That's what they're called. Lafi shemashana meseder hamishtamoshin, because they're doing things in a weird way or different way. I'm a lefty, so I can call myself that. Gundalia. Okay. Almost sounds like a gondola. Okay. Eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani. Los kasher hai be'eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani. V'hai be'eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani. Why don't we say that they're kosher, even though one is ivri, one's yavani? Da'atanan eid echad ivri ve'eid echad yavani kosher. We said it's good. So hatani ziri shneim ksherim. You're right, they are kosher. But tani didan, however, in our situation, dilma gundulis chasim utlosa echad achad v'chad achad. So we don't know, again, did they all sign it in one way, or maybe three of them signed it in one way and not the other one. So therefore, because of this confusion, so therefore, unfortunately, we say it's all going to be puzzle. Ad kan.